All right, in this video, we're going to talk about filing federal taxes. Now, we're just focusing on just the basics. All right, so we're not necessarily going to get into the nitty gritty, where it's just the basics. All right, so some basic calculations. Why do we do it? Why? How do you determine whether or not you're filing, or I'm sorry, if you're owing or if you're going to get a refund? That's kind of where we're going with this, but not like the nitty gritty. What if I have three jobs? What if I have to deduct all this mess? So, again, just the basics. All right. First off, why do we file taxes every year? Now, in layman's terms, basically, we file taxes every year to compare how much federal and state taxes we paid versus how much we should have paid. So, like, for example, let's say if you look on your W 2, okay, if you look on your W 2 and you found out, or it says that you paid, let's just say $10,000 in federal taxes. All right. All right. So, at the end of the year, you paid $10,000 in federal taxes. But let's say the government said, hey, you know what? You should have paid $11,000. So if you should have paid $11,000, then that means you're going to end up owing $1,000. You're going to be paying a check, or you'll be writing a check to the government. All right. Um, Now, let's say, for example, if you paid $10,000 in federal taxes, and then the government said, "Hey, you know what? You should have only paid us 9,000." Well, you overpaid, so we're going to give you $1,000 refund. All right. Now, what is your filing status? There's four choices. In this class, we are going to always be single. Okay. Now, all the other filing statuses, it's pretty self-explanatory what they are. But for, again, just for the basics, you are filing single. You are going to be single. Now, the next thing we need to talk about is what is called a standard deduction. Okay, a standard deduction is a dollar amount that can be subtracted from a person's income before the income tax is applied. So before you file, you can actually apply what is called a standard deduction. Now, basically, and I gave you this chart here, and this chart I basically copy pasted from Wikipedia, so I'm going to give them the credit here. As you can see, it changes throughout the year. All right, it looks like it has been on a increase over the past 7 or 8 years now. But because of the fact that we are dealing with older taxes and we're going to keep the math simple, our standard deduction will be 12,000. Okay. Now, what that means is this. So mathematically, what that means is this. So let's say, for example, you made $88,000 last year. Okay. So your W-2 said you made 88,000. What you do mathematically is you simply subtract the standard deduction, okay? Which means, in the government's eyes, so to speak, you are liable for $76,000, okay? So that is how the standard deduction works, where you get to um, deduct what they determine is the basic necessities of life. All right. So, like, for example, and we're not necessarily really going to cover this, but these are some reasons, or this is what is called an itemized deduction. So, like, for example, let's say you go through and if you want to go through your taxes super, with a fine tooth comb. All right. So let's say your home mortgage interest was $1,000. All right. Let's say your property state was $3,000. Your investment interest ends up being $2,000. And I'm totally making this up. Let's say you had a good health year, $500. And then you're charitable, you gave to a church or charity, Goodwill, whatever, and ended up being $3,000. And then let's say you go through medical deductions or miscellaneous and ends up being just $500 or $500. So all of these would be what is called itemized deductions. Okay. So you would add all those up, and when you add them all up, let's see if I can do this real quick. Let's see, that's 6, 7. I think that's $10,000. All right, if I'm looking, I'm probably wrong. If I am, you're screaming at the screen right now. So when you're filing a deduction, or when you go through when you're going through a standard deduction versus an itemized deduction, you can either go through each line by line to figure out how much you paid for each, or you could simply just do a standard deduction, which is, in this case, in this example, is going to be 12,000. Okay. Now it is 2021, and I know the deduction has now gone up to 12,550, but we're keeping things simple, and we're just going to keep it at 12,000. Okay. All right. here we go. How the standard deduction works. I already gave you an example. I'm just going to give you another one. Last year, Alan made 89,000. So he is choosing a standard deduction, which is a blanket 12,000. So that'll be 89,542 minus 12,000, which ends up being how much taxable income will he have? 89,542 minus 12,000 ends up being 77,542. All right, so that's the number that he would use to determine how much taxes he should pay. Okay, now the 2019 federal tax table, again, I know this is 2021, we're just using 2019. All right, these are all the tax rates of how much money you make over here to the right hand side versus how much money you owe. Okay, and so the best way to do this is just to dive into a question. All right. So we will constantly be coming back to this federal tax table. So let's answer a couple questions. All right. In fact, let's see if we can show both here. Okay. All right. So let's do it. So example number one, Ron is single. After subtracting the standard deduction, he calculates his taxable income will be $51,482. The instructions tell him to use the federal tax or the tax table to determine his taxes. How much does Ron owe in taxes? All right, so he subtracted his standard deduction, and now he's at 51,000. So what I'm going to do here is now go through each row, item by item, and I don't know why I arrowed that. Where does 51,000 land? Oh, here it goes. 51,000 lands in between these two numbers, 39,000 to 84,000. All right. So that means we're going to use this little formula to determine how much taxes Ron should have paid throughout the year. Okay. So if you notice, it starts off with 400 or 4,543. All right. So 4,543 plus, and I'm going to use parentheses here. It says 22%, which is 0.22, parenthesis, of the amount over 39,000. So it's a simple little subtraction problem. So 51,482 minus 39,475, because we're looking for the difference. How much more did he earn above 39,475? All right. So when you do the math, and you can, if you have a scientific calculator, you can pretty much type this in as I wrote it. Minus 39475. He should have paid at the end of the year. All right, so for this year, he should have paid $7,184.54. Okay. Now we don't have Ron's W-2, so we don't necessarily know did he pay that much or not enough or whatever. So, but that's how much the federal government says he should have paid based off his income. All right. All right. Example number two and exactly example number three are pretty much the exact same, just different numbers, different names. So John is a high school student and he is single. After subtracting the standard deduction, he calculates his taxable income is now 15,000. All right. So again, what we're doing is we're looking for on our tax table, where would 15,000 go? All right. So looking, oh, here it is, 12% right there. It would be between 9,000 and 39,000. All right. So again, using the formula, notice how it starts with 970. All right. So new line, new formula. So 970 plus 12% parenthesis of the amount over 9,700. So he made 15,902, subtract 9,700. All right. So 970 plus 0.12, parenthesis 15, 9, minus 9. All right. So the federal government says you should have paid $1,714.24. Okay. Now, lastly, example number three, again, same question, just different numbers and person. All right, so Bob is single and he owns his own plumbing business. After subtracting the standard deduction, he calculates his taxable income is a whopping $647,511. All right, so again, using the federal tax table, All right, so 647,000. So let's see. That is going to run us all the way to the 37% tax bracket. Again, looking at our numbers here, this is what we're going to do. So same concept, different numbers. All right. So we start off with 153,798.50. I don't know why they put 50 cents in there. Someone's going to have to explain that to me. Plus, now we're at 37%, 0.37, parenthesis, how much he made, 647,511, minus the amount over 510,300. All right. So 153, 798.5 plus 0.37 parenthesis. All right. He should have paid, according to this tax table, and this, I don't think I can fit this all on that line. I'm going to have to write it up underneath it. $204,566.57. All right. There we go. Okay. Let's keep going. All right, so example number 4. All right, so example number 4, here we go. Kate is single. After subtracting the standard deduction, she calculates her taxable income is 87,512. Use the tax table to answer the following questions. So this is basically those questions yet again. So let's see if I can move the tax table to right there. All right, let's see if I did it right here. I don't think I did. Okay. I'm going to pause the video for a second. All right, there we are. I just wanted to make sure that we could see the tax table with this question. All right, 87,512. So this is now going to be, there we are, the 24th. This is now going to be the, I think, fourth time we've used the table. All right, so that's $14,382.50 plus 24%, parenthesis, how much she made, 87,512, minus any amount over 84,200. All right. So how much federal taxes should she have paid? Let's see. All right, she should have paid, and I'll just write it for the first blank. She should have paid one I'm sorry, $15,627.38. That's how much money she should have paid. All right. So, but this is now a continuation. So, according to her W-2, she paid 14,000 in federal taxes. Does she owe, or will she get a refund? All right. So again, now we're going into making sure the government and our records match. So she should have paid 15,000. She ended up paying 14,000. So that means she's short. Okay. So this will be a situation where she will be owing. So she's going to have to pay money to the government. And I know it's not asking, but we're just going to be thorough here. How much exactly? Well, let's just find the difference. All right. So 114,760. So she'll be writing a check to the government for $867.38. All right. There we go. Okay. Now, this is where everything comes together. Okay. Now, let me go ahead and tell you. All right. So I am giving you the basics. All right. So there's usually a form that you would fill out. Okay. So it's a 1040 form. Okay. We're not doing the 1040 form. We're answering overall general basic um, filing tax questions. Okay. So just kind of keep that in mind. You're getting the basics. All right. Now, this right here is a W 2. Now, this W 2, if you have a job at the end of the year, you get a W 2. And what it tells us is basically how much money you made, how much money you paid in taxes. All right. So just a very quick tutorial. Here we go. Federal is usually in the upper right-hand side. Okay, so this is all federal stuff. This down here typically would be state. Okay, but we're going to pay attention to the federal stuff. Okay, so all the state stuff, on the W-2, we are not going to spend any time on. So we're just scratching that out because this is a federal video. All right. So here we go. Now, when you file, the two numbers that I highlighted are really the only two numbers that you need. How much money you made versus how much money the federal government collected in taxes. All right. So here we go. General question number one. How much money did she make? Well, 76,350. Okay. I'm not going to put the decimals just to keep it cleaner. How much did the federal government collect from her in federal taxes? It's right there. Look at that. Line 2. Federal income tax withheld. So 15,851. Okay. Now, the whole thing, everything else is, did she pay enough in taxes? That's really all we're doing here. So it says, after subtracting the standard deduction, what amount will she be looking up on the federal tax table? All right. So in this question, I told you that the standard deduction will be 12,000. All right. Again, is that the most accurate standard deduction? No, but it keeps the math clean, and you could pretty much apply the same concept to the current standard deduction. So how much money will she be looking up on the federal tax table? So it looks like that's going to be 64,350. Okay, so this number is what we're going to go to the federal tax table for. All right, I changed my screen so we can have the federal tax table with these questions. All right, so 64,350. Let's see, it looks like she's going to be in the 22nd tax bracket. All right, so using the formula 4543 plus 0.22, because 22% is 0.22. 64,350 minus 39,475. All right. So 4543 plus 0.22, 64350 minus 39,475. She should have paid, and we're going to round to the nearest whole dollar. The federal government says she should have paid $10,016, rounded to the nearest dollar. Okay, now put it together here, folks, and that is, the federal government says, hey, Joanne, you should have paid $10,000. According to Joanne's records, she ended up paying $15,000. Okay, so she actually paid a lot more than she should have. So what happens is, if you ever overpay, you're going to get a refund from the federal government. Okay, so you're going to get a refund. And how much is the refund? Well, it's basically the difference between how much she paid versus how much she should have paid. So 15,851, 10,016. So she's going to get a nice fat refund check for 5,835. Okay, that's it. All right, let's try one more. All right, so if you're still joining me, all I'm doing is just doing the exact same thing again. All right, so Jane Doe, all right, she made, now remember, here's her W-2. The only two lines that we pay attention to on the W-2 will be how much money she made and how much money the government taxed her. Okay, so how much money did she make? Well, she made 48,500. How much money did the government take from her? 6835. All right. After subtracting the standard deduction, how much will she be looking? Well, again, the standard deduction is going to be 12,000 in this problem. So doing simple math here, that should be 36,500. Now that's the number that I'm going to take to the table. So let's see if I can move the table to where we can do both at the same time. And did we accomplish that? Let's see. Yes, awesome, good. All right, so there's our table again. Notice that we keep on coming back to the table. We're going to look up 36,500, and we are going to be in the 12% bracket. All right, so here we go. So using the formula, 970 plus 0.12, parentheses, she made 36,500. Well, she didn't, but that's the number we're using, minus 9,700. All right, so 970 plus 0.12, parentheses, 36500 minus 9,700. All right, 4,186. All right, so again, draw your conclusions here. The government says, hey, you should have paid $4,000. Jane says, I paid almost 7,000. So she obviously overpaid. So again, this is another situation where she overpaid, which means she is going to get a refund. Okay. Now, how much is that refund? Well, a simple subtraction problem will tell us 4186. And so 6835 minus 4186. So $2,694 will be her refund. All right. So I appreciate you stopping by, watching this video. I hope it made sense because remember, it was just the basics. It wasn't anything that was too involved. Have a good day. Thank you.